the questions of identity and biometrics and managing information, both for people and goods across borders. I have 3 participants today, and I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves, and then I'll introduce myself as well, too. So first of all, Peter.
I'm Peter Hogebeck. I'm CEO and co-founder of Surstec. It's a small enterprise up in Sweden. We are concerned about chemicals in society and helping create awareness, knowledge about these chemicals.
Okay. Luke.
I'm Luc Tombal from Safran Morpho. I'm in charge of the strategy of the security division of Safran Morpho. Safran Morpho is a worldwide leader in identification and especially biometric system delivery with prestigious customers such as the FBI, many police forces in Europe, in Asia, in the Middle East, and in the Pacific area.
And Olivier.
I'm Olivier Monsacré from Thales. I'm working in the security department. We are a defense and security company. And I'm more especially in charge of the border activity within the company.
Thank you. And I'm Dan Kazita. I am an independent consultant. I primarily work in chemical, biological, radiological defense, and I've been working in a variety of capacities in this sector for 25 years. So enough about me. Let's talk about managing borders. Today, our idea is managing information, collecting and disseminating that information. I would like each of you to comment on what's new in that area. And I think we have an interesting mix of perspectives here. We have both Sweden and France. We have large and small companies. We have a startup. We have established companies. I think we have an interesting mix of expertise here. So I'm gonna start with Luke. Luke, what's new, both in general and perhaps specific to your company?
You know, the job of the border guard and the border control police is very sensitive and difficult. You just have a few seconds to decide if this person you have in front of you can enter or exit the territory. And for that, 2 things maybe. Anticipation is key. So all the processing that you have been able to perform before, you will save time, because time is your main enemy. You just have a few seconds. And you have to check that the person you have in front of you is the one he pretends to be. And the best way to do that, definitely, we believe, and it's a trend that we observe worldwide, is to use biometry, biometric technology, face, fingerprint, or iris.
Okay. Peter, tell me what's new.
From our perspective, I think that the challenges you have in border controls is that things are happening so fast, and you need to be really, really quick. And you don't have much money. There have always a lack of resources. So what we feel is that we are helping out is when it comes to goods, especially for chemicals, because there are so much chemicals coming in there, and when there are deviations, you need to quickly be able to find them, because as we have seen in many tragic events around the world, that most of the nasty parts of chemicals, they are being made here. They're being produced in our own countries, in homemade labs, be that narcotics or bombs. And we are there. I think border control needs to have better tools and better ways to working more efficiently and identifying these chemicals, taking their molecular fingerprints and building information databases based on that.
Okay, Olivier, what's the perspective of Thales on this?
Mostly it's quite the same, in fact. We have the same conclusion that a border officer doesn't have much time to take a decision. He has to go very fast, and his real added value is not by typing information on passport or this kind of things. Is how can we help him so all those automated tasks can be performed by computers and things, and he can concentrate on his real added value, which is looking at the behavior of people and looking at the information that the system can give him back from searching from different databases, searching from different biometric search, Interpol database, for example, and then giving him the good information for him to take the good decision.
All right, thank you for that. So what I'm sensing here, all of you agree, time is the enemy.
Yes.
The average person in the street would say that the smuggler, the terrorist, the criminal is the enemy, and that's true too. But time's very much the issue. whether it's goods or people. With goods, you're talking about entire mixed cargo containers full of things, and you have to decide which cargo containers you want to scan and not scan and all of that. People, you're right, it's very much, border guard has to make a sometimes less than 1 second decision. Am I going to...
I think you had an important point there, that whatever information you can have in advance will of course help you, that you can automate as much as the legal traffic as possible, and then you can focus your efforts on the deviations, the strange things, when things aren't really going the way you expected it to be, because there you need to spend your border control resources much more.
One thing that becomes very important in all of this is everything that we're talking about, whether it is an X-ray image of a cargo container, a scan of the chip in somebody's passport, a image off a security camera, a fingerprint, an iris scan. All these things are these are pieces of information, and these need to work in an architecture. And if you start talking about the millions of people that cross borders, the thousands of cargo containers that cross borders, this is a large amount of information. Are you working on tools and processes and procedures to manage the information and to do intelligent things with it? Because all of the data collection is only as good as the processing. So perhaps you can comment on what you might be doing from an information management standpoint.
I think that border control is not just the crossing a border.
Yes.
It starts as soon as you book your travel ticket on internet to say, okay, I want to travel to this country. And you start delivering some information. And we can use all this information in advance to identify if this person is presenting a risk or a threat for the destination country. And after that, you have many other information to manage. As an example, the visa information system. As a country, you have two possibilities. Either you trust in the passport of the passenger. In this case, as you mentioned, you have to read the passport and to read the chip and to compare the biometry and the alphanumeric data that are on the chip with the live portrait of the person and the information declared. If as a state you don't trust in the document, then you establish a visa. And more visas are based on biometry. As an example, here in Europe, if you want to come in the Schengen area and you need a visa, you'll give your fingerprint in your country of origin. And all this, plus a lot of alphanumeric data, all those information are collected in a central database. And after that, when you arrive and you cross the border, we check that you are the same person that's the one that has been registered in the origin country. And it's a huge amount of data being able to do that. And I think that the main challenge we have is to manage more and more data because we have more and more security, mixed data, alphanumeric, biometric data with a response time of 1 or 2 seconds. That's the two main challenges we have.
Okay.
Another challenge is also that today, when we are making control for goods or for people, generally we are picking also people randomly for deeper investigation because we cannot control everybody very deep. So you have a first level control and a second level control. And the second level generally is done by picking randomly some people. If we can find some way by getting all the information in advance and use them in order to transfer the random by looking at the most interesting people who can present a threat of a pattern of interest, then the border officer can focus on more specific targets where they have more chance to catch something.
Excellent. Peter?
Now that sort of selecting the right thing, I was along that line before, that being able to check especially the ones where there are any deviations, any patterns. But what we as a company have been doing that is new, because we do have, as many companies have had before, at least a couple of them, a very small scanner for identifying chemicals, a chemical detector. You just take it in your hand. It's, well, looking like this. Just take it. It says cocaine on the display. So that is nice. But what we are adding is this information management system that you're asking for, because an instrument isn't better than the data inside it, the database. And here fingerprints have come much longer, or biometrics have come much longer than for chemicals. We are bringing all that data up to a central point. And as we know that, for instance, for narcotics, there's one new narcotic coming to Europe every week. How can border police keep up? Their instruments, they will be old the same day they buy them, because the database is updated every 6 months or every year. With the system that Surstack has introduced, we are giving them an ability to, as soon as they discover something, to share it with all their instruments, making them always up to speed. And that makes customs as fast as the bad guys, and not always a long time behind.
Well, that raises an interesting point. Is the technology moving as fast as the threat, or is the threat always going to be faster than we, as both governments and companies, react to it? So, I mean, what is our speed here? Can we react to the threat?
I can give you some information regarding biometric technology.
Yes.
You are right. Maybe 5 years ago, we had 2 showstoppers using biometric technology at an airport, in a port, or for a land border. The first one is the time needed to acquire your biometry, your fingerprint and your iris, because we have to fix a dilemma between more and more security and more passenger facilitation. Yes. As a passenger, we hate wasting time in a queue at the airport. Yes, again,
so we
have to be able to take the biometry in less than 1 second. And now the technology is ready. We are able to take 2 iris plus a face in less than 1 second with a camera at a distance. And the same for the fingerprint. We are able to take 4 fingerprints with a contactless sensor in less than 1 second. So it was the first showstopper, and we fixed this. The second one, if you want to have a border management system, an efficient border management system with a global entry-exit system, you need to manage close to 1 billion of data record in your database. If you look at a country as here in France or in the US, over 5 to 10 years, if you keep all the registration, it means that you have to manage a database with 1 billion of person data record. And the technology today authorized to do this. As an evidence, you may know, it's not border control, but there's a link between the two. You may know the Aadhaar program in India. The Indian government set up a program to deliver to each citizen a unique identifier.
Yes.
And today, we have a database with 950 million of persons registered in the system. Every day, we are able to proceed 1 million persons more. And each request just needs 2 seconds to be processed. So it means that for the central system, yes, the technology is ready to be able to handle the important throughput that we have when we deal with border control.
Okay, very interesting.
I fully agree. Today, technology enables us, industrial, to capture very fast all those biometrics, all those informations, and we can process them much faster. Another thing is we can also handle different sources of data in advance. So instead of being forced just to control the person at the time of the border, we try to process the information as soon as we start to get them in order to save time and to improve the control at the end. So we don't just stay on the final control. We have the full chain where we start the control as soon as possible.
Okay. Oh, thank you. And Peter?
When it comes to the bad guys always being faster, and as the question there, can technology help us to catch up? Yes, it can. But I also think a very important part, at least in the chemical area, is collaboration. Different customs in different countries need to collaborate and to share data, for instance, about these narcotics. So if customs are working together and sharing this data through a system such as ours, then they are, of course, able to be faster. But if they work one by one, I think they will always be much further behind the bad guys than they could have been if they were working together. So we really think we should work on open systems where governments can cooperate with each other and collaborate.
Thank you. It occurs to me that none of this is free. All of this costs money. Border control costs money. governments spend money on this. Where do you see the budget trends in different countries going? I mean, either in general or in specific. Is there more money available for this now, or is there less? As often has been the case in the last, well, almost 10 years now, border control competes with other things in countries that aren't necessarily rich. Are you, well, so this is really a two-part question, and feel free to answer either part or both if you need it. Where do you see the budget trends going? And second, how can you make a value proposition? How can you provide perhaps value for money and perhaps suggest to potential government customers out there that actually they can save money by spending money? Feel free to answer either of those.
So maybe to answer partially your question. First, budget is a question of geographic area. It depends on the geographic area, and there's a direct link between the level of the threat and the budget that the government is ready to put on the table to increase the level of security. But even if a country has some constraints from budgetary perspective, what it's important to look at for a border control authority is to look at the global cost of ownership. And it's exactly what we mentioned. As an industrial company, we have to deliver them solutions to improve their efficiency. And with the same person of people, to be able to fix more cases and to target the real threat and risk. So what we have to put in perspective always is the global cost of ownership for the authorities and the government.
Okay.
In addition to that, what we bring also is we can provide other services that can be shared with the end user, the travelers, where they can also get benefit from that, where you have a faster control. Some countries have made access for such service as a charge service, so they can finance itself this way.
Global entry programs and things
exactly.
like that.
So it's a way that everybody is pleased with that because it costs at the end nothing for the state, and for the travelers it's a new service, so he's accepting to pay for that. You can also use your visa system in order to finance. I know some countries we have worked with where in fact the visa is a solution for them to budget it. And at the end, the global service and security they're getting is not increasing what is costing from the previous system. It's just how to improve what they got with their own staff, without changing their staff, and at the right level.
Okay.
Since we are working more with chemicals, to us looking at cost is what is the cost to humanity by having narcotics? What is the cost of terror? And that can of course be measured, what's cost to the environment? It can be measured in lives, it can be measured in money, and budgets are of course a reality. But if we agree on that these matters are important, then I think working with these kind of small sensors and working together and using big data makes very much sense. That will be able to help border control, customs officers, security people do more with less. Rather than sending lots of samples to labs, they take days, maybe weeks to get answers. By having people immediately with small instruments see what is happening, and then you're freeing up resources in the labs, meaning that the labs can do the serious work for the serious analysis. They can work against organized crime. Whereas with these small sensors, these small instruments, you're helping an ordinary policeman, customs officer, without special training, can quickly check whether it's an explosive, whether it's a narcotic, or whether it's a toxic substance, or just an ordinary headache pill, for instance. So I think that it will pay for itself in that way.
Okay. I want to change the subject slightly here. Obviously, you are all in this business because there's a requirement for it. Border security is a necessity in this day and age. What do you see as the practical barriers right now to further success in this area? What is keeping the borders from being perfectly secured? Well, either in general terms, like not enough money being spent on it, or maybe perhaps in practical operational concerns or technical concerns. What are the barriers? What What's the problem out there that needs to be fixed, in your opinion? I'm going to start with Olivier. What's the big obstacle out there?
I would say it depends geographically where you are working.
Well, let's say in Europe.
In Europe today, I would say one of the biggest obstacles is legislation. Because we have a lot of capacity, we have a lot of source of information. After, it's just legally we are not authorized to use it or to check them for some constraints defined for civil protection. So after, it's to find the right limit between what liberty you accept to get and what control you want to perform. So today for me in Europe, it is the main constraints because we have a lot of things available.
All right. Peter.
The barrier to the chemical part of it is basically that the tools available to the border control people have been very expensive and very complicated instruments. So you need to have specially trained teams to do the decisions. And that is actually constrained because there aren't too many of them and they are quite expensive as well. And the second barrier has been the lack of great or easy ways of sharing and cooperating. There hasn't been that developed tools for it. So there's probably lack of standard as well behind this. But once we agree on how to classify this, different government bodies can probably cooperate much more easy. And I've seen that happen in the biometrics area, for instance, already. So that has been one of the success factors, I guess, in biometrics, the standardization.
Yes. And Luc, where do you see the barriers?
Barriers. First, I think that in every country, our ecosystem is very complex. If you look at all the actors that deals with border control, it's complex. You have governmental organization, international organization, airlines, airports, ports, us as a citizen. So a lot of people to convince, to promote a new technology, a new solution. So it's normal, it takes time. Then if we come back in Europe, yes, we have the always to find, it's a question of balance between security and protection of your personal data. Okay. But we have to take this as a fact and to be able to manage that. Maybe one example of we can do, we can set up what we call an anonymous identifier. It's a little bit strange to say that an identifier is anonymous, but using your face, I can take some characteristic point and to just have a kind of signature. If someone takes this, he is not able to recognize you, but it's unique.
Yes.
And using this information, we can trace your path in the airport as an example.
It's the biometric equivalent of the old numbered Swiss bank account.
It can be, so solution exists to protect your personal data in a global system.
Okay. Finally, as I do realize, we are running a bit low on time here, but I want to ask each of you to pick an example of how the things that your company is working on, how are they applicable to other sectors beyond border control? Because this is all well and good to talk about border control, but in reality, security and defense, law enforcement, the emergency services, civil resilience, all of these things are interconnected. And so, if you could perhaps give an example of something that you're working on that has, from the border control area, that might have spin-off value in some other sector. I'm going to start with Peter.
I would say one example is how we are helping people in the fight against toxic chemicals, chemical warfare agents, first responders, different accidents. But also when something happening, a terrible chemical accident, or you're going into Syria or in Iraq looking for chemical warfare agents, to have the tool with you that you can use to quickly identify if it's a threat or not. Or even if it's a fire, you go in and see what's going on, what's happening here. Or it could be in a hospital as well, to see what kind of drug has somebody taken, or if they suffered an accident from a chemical, what has happened to them. Those are other examples where exactly the same technology, the same instrument, and the same cloud-based web services or IT-based systems can help. So that is another closely related area where we're also working.
Okay, and Luc, how about Morpho's Saffron? what can you take from the border control mission and apply elsewhere?
I think that all the solutions that we deploy for border control will be used in the near future for smart and safe city.
Okay.
I will take the example of Singapore. The airport of Singapore 15 years ago was a little bit far from the city, and the city is growing, and now the airport is inside the city, and,
Yes.
And the airport by itself is becoming a kind of city and smart city. So all this technology, being able to identify you in less than 1 second, yes, it can be used at the border, but it can be used to enter into a stadium, as an example, or to access a specific area. And we strongly believe that definitely safe and smart cities, it's another domain where this kind of technology should be useful.
Olivier.
Same. In fact, the smart cities is managing also a lot of source of information coming from different agencies, police forces, first reaction forces, firefighters, and so on. And so it's something we have deployed, for example, in Mexico City, where we have put a full system for the state of Mexico, where we manage also the video cameras informations in addition to all the normal information. And we have succeeded to decrease drastically the crime in the city and the reaction time of any forces.
All right, well, I'll see if I can sort of recapture what we've talked about here. That time is, to go back to the beginning, time and timing is our enemy. All right, we have to work fast enough. In fact, we have to work almost in reverse. We have to start the Border Patrol job long before something gets to the border. That's one thing I wanted to capture. The second is that from an industrial perspective, you can offer value for money. Everything you do costs money, but in a lot of ways you can save money off of something else by proper implementation of the things that you do. There are barriers to success. They are wide and diverse, whether they be legislative or budgetary, or I guess in the case of chemical identification, educational. You know, and finally, the things that collectively that your three companies do have widespread applications outside of just the strict border control domain. So I think this has been a very useful discussion. I thank you for your time, and I thank our host, the High Committee for Civil Defense, and enjoy the rest of your time here at Milipol 2015. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Thank you very
All
much.
right.